Stemmerman and Ganim, former gubernatorial candidates who ran this past year, lost in the August primary, and are with us here tonight to lend their insight and late-breaking information that they're getting on their phones.
Let's start with you, Mayor. What do you make of the slow return?
It seems slow. Usually the smaller towns report early, and as we talked about, you mentioned earlier, you'd see if there's a Republican majority in those towns, you might see a lead on the Republican side, and then you'd look for those bigger cities, Democratic populations to come in later. And then, this is coming in slow. It's close all the way through, so it's painfully slow.
Folks, we have one more race to report right now. This just into our newsroom. Congressman Joe Courtney has been re-elected in the 2nd District, and I'll bring you in, David Stemmerman, for this conversation, because that was a district where President Trump did fairly well 2 years ago, and the Republicans really don't have a candidate there.
Well, this is really the case of the split of what's going on at the federal level and the state level. And so that's really, it's almost like a tale of two elections of what's going on here. At the federal level, you have Democrats very energized with their anger towards the president. And at the local level, people are very focused on their anger towards the governor. And what we're going to see in the 2nd Congressional District is exactly that kind of split.
It's kind of interesting to me that two names that are not on the ballot, President Trump and Governor Malloy, the race has been shaped around both of them.
Absolutely. So one of the things I found interesting at a national level, it said 75% of voters said that they are voting, sending a message to Donald Trump, either in favor or against. Now, in Connecticut, I think it's a little bit different because we have a governor who is even more unpopular in the state than Donald Trump is. So this is the cross current. This is part of why it's going to be a tough election for us to understand, because you've got some people coming out for the federal race, some for the state race, and how it's going to come together, we'll find out.
How did you and Bob Stefanowski do in that district, the 2nd District?
2nd Congressional District, Bob did extraordinarily well.
So he's strong there, you're saying?
Yes, this is one of the reasons why he won the primary, is that his strength resonating with that voter in the 2nd Congressional District. He did very well there. So I expect him to have a big night in those towns.
All right, Mayor, I want you to weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's the 1st CD, which has a high concentration of Democrats, the Hartford, Greater Hartford area. And then there's the ability to kind of cut into what would normally be a larger Republican turnout in Fairfield County. Certainly Bridgeport plays a role in that, but you have Stanford. I don't think we've seen any numbers from Stanford yet, Norwalk. I mean, when Jim Himes wins the 4th Congressional, which I'm sure he's going to do tonight, he does it with the pluralities out of the 3 bigger cities. So that dynamic, we're going to have to watch. This may be a little bit back and forth at the pace it's coming in. We're just going to have to see how it shakes out. But
yeah, just the contours of the map really are changing. So if you think about looking back to 2010, 2014, you would have expected in the 2nd Congressional District for Democrats to do better. But now it's in the suburbs of Fairfield County. A few of the races, my hometown of Greenwich, you have Scott Francis had a tougher race. I think he's going to win, but it's been a much more competitive race. You have Tony Boucher in that area, who has been a very successful candidate, has had a much tougher challenger. So in that part of the state, that's where Ned is going to be looking to do better. And Bob is looking to run up the score in places like Beacon Falls. So it's the whole contours of the race. It's going to be tough for us to follow, and the numbers in aggregate now are extraordinarily close.
And we haven't even talked about the state Senate and the state House. I don't know if we can get to that, but I mean, those two weigh in the balance as this thing comes together tonight too. I mean, you have a dead even 18-18 split in the Senate. We know there's, you profiled certainly at least one race, but there's 2 or 3 that could tip this thing one way or the other, and the House as well.
Absolutely.
And so it's going to be an interesting, and I don't mean that from a disinterested point of view, very interesting and significant evening, historic in many ways, certainly in Connecticut and across the country.
And to your point, regardless of who wins the governorship, the legislature is of critical importance. We've had one party controlling the legislature almost uninterrupted for 44 years. And for each election, regardless of what's happened at the top of the ticket, Republicans have been making progress. And so this will be a critical election, whether we have either Stefanowski or Lamont. Who are they going to be working with as the leadership in both the Senate and the House? We won't know until later in the evening.
Good point. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. It is. And again, we have many hours to go, most likely.